For centuries, humans sketched wildly complicated machines, like heavy wooden wings flapped by human muscle, that never managed to leave the ground. But between 1783 and 1915, in a compressed window of just 130 years, engineers finally cracked the math of defying gravity. They didn't arrive at a single, unified solution right away. Instead, inventors split into two completely separate camps, pursuing entirely different sets of physics. The first approach relied on lighter-than-air craft. These vehicles didn't push themselves into the sky. They used the passive physics of buoyancy to float upwards. The second approach focused on heavier-than-air machines. This required forcing a dense, solid object into the air by aggressively manipulating aerodynamic pressure. To see how we arrived at the massive commercial jets we fly in today, we have to look at how these early engineers wrestled with the distinct mechanics of both pillars. Manned flight technically started in France in 1783, when the Montgolfier brothers rode a hot air balloon into the sky. Soon, engineers realized they could achieve incredible lift by filling these balloons with hydrogen, a highly effective gas that unfortunately had a habit of violently exploding. As designs matured, those unsteerable balloons evolved into dirigibles. These were massive, motorized airships built to transport cargo and heavy passenger loads across vast distances. But an airship of that scale presents an immediate engineering problem. How do you precisely control the altitude of a giant, rigid gas bag? The solution was a clever piece of internal plumbing called the ballonette system. Inside the massive helium chamber sit two smaller airbags, the ballonettes. Pumping outside air into these ballonettes compresses the helium trapped above them. This increased density forces the ship to descend. Releasing the air expands the helium, dropping density so the craft rises. This elegant manipulation of density gave humans their first sustained access to the sky. Yet these vehicles were ultimately captives of buoyancy. They were highly sophisticated floaters, but they weren't truly flying. While airships drifted above, a rival group of engineers looked at the problem from an entirely different angle. They ignored buoyant gases completely and studied the simple physics of a child's tethered kite. A well-made kite, stabilized by its tail, is designed to pitch backward and sit at a highly specific angled posture against oncoming wind. When moving air strikes this tilted angle, wind rushing over the top edge travels faster, creating a pocket of thin, low-pressure air. Simultaneously, wind plowing into the flat underside compresses into high-pressure air. This dense air underneath pushes up into the low-pressure void, generating lift. Engineers realized this exact geometry could be scaled up. In 1804, pioneers like Sir George Cayley removed the tether completely, using the kite's shape to build the first functional, stringless gliders. They proved that solid wings could surf on air pressure. But a glider still relies on a strong headwind or a steep hill to generate that initial airflow. Without a way to push themselves forward, these machines would always eventually glide back to the dirt. To achieve sustained flight, a heavier-than-air machine needed to generate its own continuous wind pressure. It needed mechanical thrust. In 1885, Gottlieb Daimler developed the single-cylinder combustion engine. This provided a dense, reliable power source that was finally light enough to lift its own weight. Simply strapping a heavy engine to a set of wings did not guarantee flight. Inventors like Samuel Langley built massive, unwieldy craft that plunged directly into the water because they failed to balance their mechanical power with stable aerodynamics. It wasn't until 1903 that Orville and Wilbur Wright perfected the math. They successfully married the aerodynamic lift of the kite with the continuous thrust of the internal combustion engine. Their brief 12-second flight over the Carolina sand permanently ended the debate. It proved that manipulating air pressure with mechanical power was the viable path forward. By the time the early aviation period closed in 1915, giant airships still dotted the skies, but it was abundantly clear that heavier-than-air craft had won the engineering war. Winged aircraft achieved speeds that blimps could never match. They could be mass-produced efficiently, and most importantly, they completely eliminated the need to fill fragile envelopes with highly explosive gases. Decades of iterating on those initial principles of pressure and thrust eventually produced machines capable of breaking the sound barrier, like the modern military jets we see today. That same lineage stretches directly from Cayley's primitive gliders to the massive, multi-ton commercial jetliners that safely transport millions of passengers across oceans every day. And every single time a plane accelerates down a runway, it relies on high pressure pushing against low pressure. We are riding on the legacy of the simple kite, an aerodynamic principle that proved humanity didn't need to float to conquer the sky.